So to sort of take a step back before we dive into what's new about themes, I just want to talk about themes sort of in general and explain sort of what they are and the things that they allow you to do. And so I'm going to share my screen and we can go through it there. All right, so you should be seeing a map currently with a lot of stuff in the US and then one thing in the UK, and otherwise pretty boring looking map. So this is one of our staging sites. I'm going to use it to sort of show you the different theme settings that are available. And to get started, like at the moment, the site is currently using a default theme. And so themes are the ways that you can choose if you don't have the custom branding that all of you are currently using. It's ways that organizations can choose what fonts and colors they want to use on their site. So there's a whole page where anyone with admin privileges is able to set up whatever fonts and colors are useful for that organization. Usually it's to match the organization's main brand. It could be some alternate brand that they're using specifically for the ControlShift site. And we try to make it really simple. So it doesn't require you to know CSS or HTML. We just give you different places where you can plug in a color. So you can say like, what is the default color that we use most often? For Greenpeace, it's often greens, although not for everyone on this call. It's usually greens though. You can choose secondary colors, you can choose link colors and title colors and font colors and all of these different things to sort of set up what the default theme for the organization is. And so, as I said a couple times now, for those of you on the call currently, like none of you are using this for your default pages. You're not using this for your default brandings. But there are some organizations who actually do use this as their primary branding and they don't have any custom branding at all. Within themes, you can also choose various fonts. These are any fonts that are free from Google within Adobe Typekit or the graphic font that we provide to sort of everyone as a default font. You can also set up logos and links in the header and the footer and really customize the look and feel of the platform using the themes page. And so the previous version of themes, this was what you could do. You could only set up one of these, but it would allow an organization to change their branding whenever they wanted to without having to talk to us. But previously, they could only set up one version of this branding. So they could set up a single color palette, a single set of fonts, a single set of links. And so the new features that we've rolled out basically allow you to set up multiple themes and to use them in different places. So we're going to talk about all of these different use cases, but just to get you thinking about why you might care about this. So you could do something where if you're doing a lot of campaigning with a specific partner and maybe they are less enthused about having a lot of Greenpeace branding on all of the pages, you could set up a custom brand that is perhaps some colors from their organizational color palette, some of your Greenpeace color palette. Maybe you have special links in the header that have, a link to their main site that you wouldn't normally want in the header of all of your pages, but you maybe do want in the header of the pages for the campaigns that you're partnering on. So you can do that and you can sort of customize the look and feel for that specific partner and the campaigns that they're helping you to run. If you're hosting an effort, which a lot of Greenpeace organizations do, where you have a templatized campaign that has a lot of similar petitions, but each targeting a local specific, either elected official or private citizen, depending. So I think this is something that Greenpeace France has done with airports, I think is one that you've done. So let's say you had that type of campaign where you're going to have 100 different petitions all around your country. They're going to be targeting different people, but all asking for the same things. You might have a specific brand that's associated with that campaign. So maybe in social media and the other places where you're publicizing that brand, maybe you've put something together and it has its own specific brand. You could create a theme that matches and then assign that brand to all of the petitions in that effort. So that way, someone who's moving from your social media post about this campaign you're running to the actual petitions themselves is having a consistent experience across all of the pages. The same is true for days of action. So if you're organizing a bunch of events all around the country on a specific issue or on a specific set of days, and that day of action, you've put together like a micro brand for that specific day of action, you can similarly have that theme set up on the ControlShift side and then mirror it into all of the petitions that are in that day of action. So again, there's a consistent experience and all of your different materials match with one another. And then the final one, which I think is probably less useful for Greenpeace folks, but you can decide whether it's useful for you or not, is you can also tie brands to specific URLs or specific host names. And this can be useful for organizations who have multiple legal identities. So within the US, we have a customer who is both a C3 and a C4, which is like the way they're taxed within the US tax code. So they're like two separate legal identities that are taxed differently and have different regulations that are required. And they're completely separate legal identities. And so that organization needed to be able to have one version of the site that is on a specific URL that is branded to match the one tax structure of the organization, and then a separate branding that is tied to the other tax structure that is based on the other URL. And so depending on which URL you're viewing of the site, you'll see a different branding depending. So that's sort of another thing you could do. I could imagine you tying a branding, like let's say that you were doing an effort campaign or a day of action, and you wanted to have a special URL that sends people to those events or those petitions that's different from your main organizational URL. You could set that up, you could add that separate host name, and you could apply the branding there so that when someone lands on that special campaign URL, they'll see the things that you set up for them and the branding that you've created. Does that all make sense in terms of the ways that you could use it? Just as like another sort of small flag in case you haven't heard, there's been some changes to the way partners and way organizations can sort of use change.org to collect signatures. So if that's something that you're thinking about, that could also be useful in the partnerships use case of potentially making additional overtures to partner organizations that you're maybe interested in running campaigns with that have been using change.org in the past, and saying like, hey, it's going to be more difficult for you to get those signatures out, at least according to what we've seen in the press releases from change.org. So maybe you want to partner with Greenpeace France, Greenpeace MENA, Greenpeace Philippines, and we'll help you run a campaign together. We'll set up this branding for you. It's going to be great. And you can send people to our version of the platform instead. So that's just something else to keep in mind potentially. Any questions so far? No? Okay, so let's talk about how you actually set one of these up. Actually, before we do that, let's talk about sort of what this actually means in terms of what it would look like on the platform itself. So this is our default version of the staging site. It's sort of not branded as ControlShift because we use it in sales types calls when we want people to be thinking about their organization, not ControlShift. It's just very blue, which is our default blue for most of the platform, a little bit of orange, pretty simple branding. We try to keep it pretty simple. And you might already be familiar with this page already. So basically what the second brand allows me to do is to say, if I send you to, in this case, more momentum instead of momentum, you're going to see this completely different branding. So very different colors. We have a different logo. We have different links in the header. It's a pretty different experience, even though the actual items that you're seeing in the list are for the most part the same. I'm hiding the events button because the events are actually different depending on which version of the URL I'm on, but the groups are the same across the different ones. And so someone can sort of get involved and take action here, but they can see whatever branding you've set up for them based on, in this case, the URL that they've landed on. So I can have a very different experience between the first branding and the second one. And that covers both the colors, which are the most obvious part of the changes, but also the links in the header, links in the footer. So maybe you have special links that you want to include on a specific brand or with a specific partner. You can also change fonts and other things throughout the platform. There are more links on the homepage that you can also change. So you could sort of customize this to be whatever you want it to be. And so in terms of how I set this up, great question. Elodie asks, does this theme impact blast emails? It does a bit. So for the most part, the blast emails the text and content of them doesn't really change. What will change is if you've set up a theme tied to a host name. So let's say that you have this, what I've been calling watermelon theme, because it's sort of colors of a watermelon. And you've set this up to be on the more momentum version of your URL. If someone is viewing an event page that has this theme, then when they go to share or when they RSVP to an event, let's say, they'll see this version of the URL, even if it's not your primary URL, even if it's not the one that you would send most people to, we'll specifically send them to this version, and that will be updated within the emails that they send. And so when they go to share this on social media, or when they go to share it via email, they'll be sending people to the correct version of the URL for this theme. If you don't set up special theming per URL, then we'll just send them to whatever URL they were initially on when they took action. So it's a little bit different. Yes, so Luca asks, can you please clarify the connection between themes and custom domains or subdomains? Does it have to be a one-to-one connection, e.g. all of Momentum will have this one theme? It doesn't have to be, no. So there's, so on this theme, we have this set up so that any pages that I go to for the most part on this version of a new URL will have this sort of watermelon-y theme. But not all of them will. So if I go to a partnership page, which I don't actually know the URL, let me grab it. If I've overridden the theme on something else, so for example, I set up this GP partner, let's say that I go here and just copy this URL over at the end. I'll see whatever more specific theme I've set up. So the connection between URLs and themes is sort of the last thing that we look at. So we'll look at basically everything before that. So do you have a special theme set up for an individual petition, event, or group? We'll use that one. If you don't, we'll then look at, do you have a special theme set up for either the calendar that event is in or the effort that petition is in? And then we'll use that theme if that's been set up. If not, we'll then look at, is it tied to a partner and does that partner have a special theme? If it doesn't, we'll then look at regions, which I don't think anyone on this call is using, and see if the regions have a theme. If it doesn't, then we look at the URL to say, does this URL have a special theme set up? And then if that's not the case either, then we'll go to what is your default theme, and we'll just show you whatever branding is set up for the platform as a whole. And yeah, so basically it's sort of one of the last things we look at. If you set up any customizations at a lower level than that, we will use those customizations instead. And then if not, we'll keep working back until we get to the URL to say, does it have a special theme there? Luca also asks, if you wanted to connect a new domain to a CSL site and a theme, can you do it ourselves? Thinking about microsites, you can do it yourself. So if you go, excuse me, if you go into the admin settings for the platform as a whole, and then into basics, you can see host names here. You can basically add any, yeah, it makes it very much easier than it used to be. So you can basically add any host name. Usually the steps here would be to first create the subdomain or the special microsite domain within your DNS manager. So, you know, let's say that Greenpeace Philippines is creating, you know, your own subdomain. That's a new campaign. You would go to whatever hosting provider, DNS provider you're using for your main site and create that subdomain. Usually be Cloudflare, might be something else. And IT can help you, or Luca can help you if you're not sure what all this means. So once you have that in mind, you could say, you know, this is a microsite test. I'm just going to do ControlShift.app, which if you wanted to use a ControlShift.app domain, it's very, very fast. So you would set this up. It would show you a record to create and to add to your DNS manager. So a CNAME record, which you don't really need to understand what that means. It would just be a record you would add. Hit save. It'll then create that new host name. This is a bit faster than it would likely be for you if you're setting up an external URL, but you can then send people to this new host name, and you can start setting up the theme for it after that. Great. So let's pretend actually that we're doing a microsite. We can use this as a test case and sort of go through the steps that you might take if you were setting up a microsite. So we've added our microsite hostname, and let's say that we now want to set up a theme for this microsite. So maybe this new microsite, for some reason, I want to do one that we haven't done before. We're going to make it very purple because I don't have purple set up yet. And so let's say that this is our day of action. For some reason, we landed on purple. Maybe we're working with partners and that's what they decided should be our shared theme for this day of action that we're doing. So I can create this new theme. Again, I went to settings, themes, new theme here, and then just gave it a name. So I gave it the name purple. And that will bring me to this page here where I then see these color swatches that I can click into and say, let me set up a new color. You can use either hex codes, which usually look something like, I couldn't remember if it was 1 or 7. So it looks something like this, where it's usually like a 6 code with a a number sign in front. And you can sort of look up what these are. If you're looking for a specific color, you can just search for hex code and whatever broad color you're looking for, and they'll have suggestions. There are also HTML color names, which you can use, and those are names that are recognized as always the same color, regardless of what page you're on. So things like purple have a color, or magenta has a very bright color that is a little too in your face for this, I think. So we're just going to go with purple. And we'll go from there. So I can submit the color I want to use. I can set up different colors. Maybe for this one, I do want everything to be purple for the most part, because it's going to make it easier for me to set this up. So we're not going to do anything too crazy. And let's say I do actually want the header to be similarly purple, just so that it's more obvious that it's different. We'll make these black when I hover over them. And I can sort of go through and customize any of the things that need to be customized. For the most part, there's help text here to explain what we're talking about for each of these different colors. If you have any questions, you can let us know, but it should be fairly self-explanatory, hopefully, about where these colors appear. I can change fonts. So let's say that I want to use Architect's Daughter because it's the first one I clicked. And we'll use Oxygen because, sure. I don't know what that is, but it looks fine. I can then set up special logos. So let's say for this microsite, we had some sort of shared logo for our day of action. I'm not going to set that up because I don't have a logo handy, but let's just pretend that we had that. And then I can set up special links. So maybe for this day of action that we're doing with partners, I want to link to each of those partner organizations as well. And so let's just say, oh, let me actually do this. We'll go to Green Voice because Green Voice was just mentioned, which I believe is .org.fr. I could be wrong. I think it's .org.fr. We'll find out. And we'll say that this is one of our partner orgs. And yeah, we'll go for there. And I can set up the same thing with footer links. I'm not going to do that because it just takes up a bit more time. But let's say that you could set up all of these things if you wanted to. So I've set up some basic branding for this microsite that we're going to create. And I'm happy with the brand, happy with the purple, all's great. I can then click to go back to this first page. So if I go to themes and then click in, I'm brought here. And this is where I can say this should by default be used for the specific host name that we just added. So I can say that this should be used for the microsite. And that means that anyone who goes to this microsite URL will automatically see this new purple theme that we've put together. And so this is the first step. But presumably, when you're doing this microsite, you also have, a day of action that you specifically want people to be creating events for. So the next thing that I can do is I can say, for this specific microsite, I want specific events to appear on the events map. So if I go to the main site over here and go to /events, I see all of the events that are created across the site. So this is across many different calendars. This is across, all different event types, different regions, different locations. It's any events that we know about at ControlShift. It's possible for me to say, I don't want all of these events to show up on this day of action microsite that we're setting up. I only want specific events. I only want the ones that are specifically part of this day of action. So to do that, I would go into the admin events list over here. And I would add filters until I get the admin version of the list I'm looking for. So in this case, let's say that we only want the things that are part of this house parties calendar. We'll pretend this house parties calendar is our day of action that we've set up the microsite for. So I'm going to add this filter and save it as a new preset and say that this is our microsite day of action. You could add additional filters too, if you wanted to. So let's say you wanted calendars, but you also want only the things happening in a specific country, or you want only things that are in this house parties calendar and are specifically tagged as, I don't know, letter writing parties or something like that. Like you can add as many filters as you want to add from this filter list, but I'm going to keep it pretty simple. But you can see that there are other filters you can add that would also allow you to filter this list down a little bit more. So if I were to roll this filter out, there would currently be 8 events that are visible to supporters because those are the ones that have been moderated to be visible, and there are 8 of them. So I can save this as a preset. It's saved up here now. So I can now quickly go back here as an admin and say, show me the events that are part of this filter, show me the events that are part of this filter. And I can sort of see that more quickly than having to add new filters on my own. If I click this cog here, I can then publish this to make it available to the rest of the organization. So this can be useful if you have multiple admins who are working on the site. And let's say that your filters are a little bit more complicated than what I've done here. Maybe you're looking for, specifically events that are in a specific region that are starting between, next month and 2 months from now, and you only want in that range. Let's say you want them to be moderated to a specific status, or you want them to be a specific event type. You can add as many of these filters and then share these filters with admins. So even if you weren't building a microsite for this, the way we are for this example, if it's just useful for you to be able to see these filters and quickly add them with one click, you can still create these preset filters and save them or publish them to the rest of the site. So this like fits in with theming, but it's not specific for theming. So I've published that filter. I can then go back to the theme page for the theme that I just set up for this microsite. Before I actually do that, let's just like pull it up before it's pre-filtered. So at the moment, I would see this. I see lots of different events, 2 pages worth of events that are available for someone to join. Because I want only the things that are in this day of action to be included on this microsite, I'm going to scroll to the very bottom to where it says preset filters. And I'm going to say that this should use the microsite day of action preset filter that we just set up. So I can click save there. And then when someone comes back to this all events list and reloads it, they're now only seeing, well, actually they're seeing the same exact set of events because apparently that's all that's been moderated to good. But they would only see the events that are part of this microsite filter. So if we had more events that were outside of that filter, they would see other events there. Okay, it actually just refiltered down to 1 page. So it just took a second. So now only seeing the events on 1 page worth of events, which will be a smaller filter than all of the events that are available. So this could be, again, a day of action where we've pre-filtered down the set of events that not all of them are visible, just the ones that fall into a specific coalition that we're running. Any questions on that part of it? No? Okay. So let's say that maybe this microsite that we're running, we are doing events, we're doing a day of action, we are partnering to do that day of action, but we're also running petitions as well. And we also want some petitions to use this microsite theming. So there are basically 2 ways to do this. One option is, let's say that there was just a single petition that we wanted to use this theme. We could go into the platform, go to the admin view of that petition, and then right here is a theme section where we can say this petition specifically, we're going to ignore all other rules and say that it should use a specific theme. So we'll say that it should use the purple theme. Now, when someone goes to this petition page, regardless of what URL they're on, they'll see this purple theming because we've said for this petition, always use this theme. Don't look at any other rules. So that's one option. Maybe we only have this one petition, and so we're sort of done now. We just wanted that one link to be set up this way. The other option would be to say that we want all petitions or all events associated with a partner to use a specific theme, or all petitions in a landing page or an effort to use a specific theme. And so just as a reminder, efforts are the things where you can do templatized campaigns targeting many local decision makers. Many of you have used this tool already. So let's say that we want this ban the bag, all petitions within ban the bag to also use this microsite theme because it's part of the microsite we're setting up. Basically, what I can do is go into the effort and then settings, and then choose the theme from here and say, for every petition in this effort, unless we've overridden it on a petition level, I want it to use this purple theme. And so that will update not only the petitions themselves, but also the lookup pages, the recruitment pages, pretty much anything that's explicitly associated with this effort will automatically be updated to this microsite theme that we've set up. So you see the colors have changed. We've also changed the links in the header to be what we set up for this theme. So it's another way of, again, making sure that someone who is maybe coming from a microsite that you set up into specific petition pages to take action is having a consistent experience versus switching a branding once they hit the ControlShift site. And similarly, you can do the same thing for partners. So you can also set up branding for partners, which will then flow down to all of the petitions and events that are within that partnership. So it's a way of sort of collecting all of those petitions and events together and updating their theme all at once in bulk. Any questions on any of that so far? No? Okay, so I guess the other thing I would say on the partnership side specifically, so this one I created to be sort of Greenpeace colors, which is not our default for this site. And so again, you can customize for the partner, set up the fonts and colors, set up the links in the header if you wanted to change them. The other thing that is true is that as someone moves through the platform tying to this partnership, so as they're creating a new petition within this partnership, we'll also update those pages as well. If they specifically click the new petition button on the partnership page, they'll be able to see all of it remaining in the colors of the partner as they move through the petition creation flow. So that way, again, they're feeling consistent. They're not sort of being jumped between brandings without knowing why the site is changing colors. So that's all possible as well. And you can basically create as many themes as you want. So if you did have multiple microsites going, you can create different themes for all of them. You could create different themes for every partner if you wanted to. I wouldn't necessarily think that might be the best use of time. But for maybe larger partners or partners who are a little bit more skeptical about partnering, it could be something that you offer to them as an additional incentive. These themes can also be removed. So let's say you had, a microsite that you were running, and then you eventually decide, like, we're done with this microsite, this campaign is over, we just want to clear this theme out. You can return to the themes page, go back into the specific theme that you've set up, and then delete it later on. Basically, what that will do is it'll just remove the theme assignments from whatever this theme was assigned to. So the pages will continue to work, the URL will continue to work, all of that. Nothing will break. It'll just go back to whatever theme it would normally default to. So either your default theme or potentially a different theme if there's something that's higher in the list. So nothing breaks if you delete. It is also possible to switch your current custom branding to be themed branding. It's something that we're hoping to do for most organizations in the future, but it's not something that we're currently enforcing people with existing branding to do. What you can't see, because it's not currently visible to org admins, is that we as ControlShift admins have a little bit of additional things that we can do from our admin tools that are beyond just the color swatches. So when we do switch over to themes eventually, you'll likely have some ability to keep some of the customizations that you already have on an ad hoc basis. Luca asks, can you bulk switch the whole site to a custom theme, e.g. for Indigenous Rights Day? Absolutely. So let me switch to one of our staging sites because it'll look a little bit different than it would look here. I'm trying to think who has custom branding and I can switch them over. Log in there. So basically, when you go to the themes page, you'll see something that says you're currently using custom branding. So it'll look a little bit different for you than it would currently look when we are about to switch the theming. So you can basically, you'll see like a little message here instead of this default tab that says you're using custom brand. But let's say you were creating a theme for Indigenous Peoples' Rights Day. You can set up that theme. You can have it waiting sort of in the background until you're ready to switch it. And then you would just click make default. It'll switch you over to using this theme as your default theme. And so now when someone comes to your main site, they will see the default theme that you've switched over to. When you're done, so like when you want to switch back to your other theme, there would normally be a little message here that says revert to your custom styles. And then there would be a button that you could click to say revert to custom styles. So yeah, it would look a little bit different, but effectively that. And you'd be able to return if you needed to. No? Okay, so I did want to go over the rules about like how we decide a theme again, just because I think it's a little bit confusing. So we have a help document here that you can take a look at later. I can also post it in the chat. And it talks about how to set up a theme. Oh, I think I just sent that to someone else. There we go. You can see more information there, but it also has the rules for how we decide when we're looking at a specific page, which theme we should be showing. And I'm realizing this is probably a little bit small for you, so let me make it full size. So just to go through them once. So let's say we're looking at a specific petition page. We'll first look to see, have you assigned a specific theme to that petition page alone? So did you go into a petition page, into their admin section and say, for this theme, I want you to use this specific whatever. So did you override it from the admin settings? If not, then we'll say, is this petition part of a, I'm going to skip some of these. Is this petition part of an effort? Is it part of one of these templatized campaigns? If it is, did you set up a specific theme for the effort from the effort settings page? If so, we'll use that theme. If not, we'll say, is this part of a partnership? And did you set up a special theme for that partner? If not, then we'll go, probably for all of you, next would be to the host name and say, are we viewing this petition on a specific host name, and should that host name have its own brand? And if not, we'll just use your default theme. So you can override at any of these levels. If you override one of these later levels, but you also have an override on a lower level, we'll use whatever the lower level override is, because we look at the first one. If that is no, then we go to the second one, then we go to the third, et cetera. But if we find special branding on any of these levels, we'll use whichever one we come to first. Okay, the last couple of things I wanted to mention about themes that are not abundantly obvious if you're clicking through the site. So one thing is that I mentioned that the available fonts currently are Typekit fonts and fonts that are free from Google Fonts, and that you can see a list of them here. Well, I'll say first of all that one of that does include the Roboto fonts, which I think are a lot of Greenpeace organizations are either using Roboto or Noto, and those are both in here if you're interested in knowing that. We can also support custom fonts though. So if you had a microsite that is using a custom font that you have a license for and you have font files for, you can send them to us and we can upload them into your themes page so that you will see them in your dropdown as a custom font. So if you don't see the font here and you do have access to it, you can let us know and we can update it for you. The other thing I did want to mention, although I think perhaps GP Mina is the only one who would maybe care about this, is that the customizations for the header and footer links include, and the logos as well, but it's a little bit more hidden for header and footer links. These also do support translations. So for example, if you are GP Mina and you are operating in both Arabic and English, and you wanted to have custom links for a specific theme, you can still translate those links so that someone can view the custom theme in different languages and have things translated. So that is still available. And then any of the custom content that you've set up is shared across themes. So for the most part, rewrapping the site, doing a new set of colors and an alternate theme is not going to change the text content of your various pages. So for example, your homepage, regardless of which which theme you're using, your homepage is going to have, for example, the same text on this right sidebar here, where it'll say the same thing that you've set up. It'll have the same featured campaigns. So it's not actually changing the content. It's more rewrapping the site to have different fonts and colors. So that's just something to keep in mind.